anti-Semitism. Not an official document. There were particular concerns given references to current forms of Israel-related anti-Semitism. Nevertheless, over time, a range of NGOs has adopted this practical working definition of the EOMC. It simplifies the evaluation of anti-Jewish incidents and crimes, an evaluation that each European country had previously carried out according to its own criteria. A uniform practice-oriented definition provides an important orientation for law enforcement as well as for political education and counseling for victims of violent anti-Semitic crimes. Since May 2016, a modified version of this working definition of anti-Semitism became the basis for the work of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, but with the caveat that it is not a binding document for the IHRA's now 35 member states. It was only under this condition that certain member states that criticized the wording of the definition would agree to its implementation. The definition reflects the language of the draft from 2005 within the EOMC area. What was slightly changed was an explanatory section on Israel-related anti-Semitism. The statement that anti-Semitic expressions can also relate to Israel comes from the original version. The following sentence, but, was added. I quote, however, criticism of Israel similar to that leveled against any other country cannot be regarded as anti-Semitic. End of quote. That in mind, we have to be aware that the boundary between legitimate criticism of Israeli politics and, on the other side, content that is unquestionably anti-Semitic. It is a gray zone that is constantly being renegotiated. In many European countries, Israel is often used as a stand-in for the Jews. This seems to allow people to break the taboo against anti-Semitism in public discourse. They use the platform to say what they ever wanted to express against Jews, because in many countries, it's more or less, it depends on the laws, a criminal act if you express anti-Semitic content in public. If you do that in connection with Israel, it seems not to be anti-Semitic, but it is. It was part of the independent expert group on anti-Semitism appointed by the German Bundestag. This part of anti-Semitism, of Israel-connected anti-Semitism, and the gray zone, we explained that I was part of this independent expert group, and we submitted our report on anti-Semitism in the Federal Republic of Germany at the end of January 2017. We pointed out that in an academic sense, the working definition of anti-Semitism is not a tool for this academic research. In this field, it needs a more elaborated definition, which we provided in the report and which covers the complex contexts and perspectives of anti-Semitism. But we recommended strongly the working definition of anti-Semitism, in particular for police and law enforcement, as well as for teaching, but also for NGOs keeping track of anti-Semitic incidents. As the general public, but not seldom also politicians and stakeholders, like to use simple explanations for complex issues, a simple definition is more than welcome. After all, the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism is a relevant tool to publicly explain the willingness by governments and parliaments, if they endorse or support this definition, that anti-Semitism is something which is not only directed against Jews, but against the whole society, and that it has to be rejected and counteracted in any case. As such, the definition draws a clear line in the sense of an explicit statement that anti-Semitism is by no means tolerated, and that all efforts must be made to counteract these prejudices, resentments, and stereotypes. The working definition sounds, since its adoption in 2016 at the IRA plenary at Bucharest, in the following, sounds the following. I quote, anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews, which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jews or non-Jewish individuals, that means those who are perceived as Jews, and or their property toward Jewish community, institution, and religious facilities. To guide IRA in its work, the following examples may serve as illustrations. And there are a lot of, or quite a few examples to make clear what is meant. For example, calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews in the name of a radical ideology or an extremist view of religion. Making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews as such, or the power of Jews as collective, such as especially but not exclusively, the myth about a world Jewish conspiracy, which is becoming more important in these times of pandemics. We had such demonstrations where these Jewish conspiracy ideas came up again, or the classical view of Jews controlling the media, economy, government, or other societal institutions. Accusing Jews as a people of being responsible for real or imagined wrongdoing committed by a single Jew, or a group, a Jewish group, or even for acts committed by non-Jews. There's, for example, now this alleged idea of George Soros, the American Hungarian Jewish hedge fund manager, who supposedly brings all the refugees to Germany, and now it is said that he will do anything to spread the pandemic in our societies. So there are a lot of these examples. I think they help to clarify what is meant by the definition. The pioneer of this implementing of this definition was Great Britain. And Great Britain is also the pioneer of monitoring of anti-Semitism and inclusion of NGOs in the process of statistical recording of anti-Semitic incidents. The working definition, the so-called working definition of anti-Semitism, since its first UNC version, has long been used in UK in police work. In December 2016, the British Parliament decided to adopt an almost identical text based on what is now generally called the IRA working definition. According to Downing Street, the definition aimed to, I quote, ensure that culprits will not be able to get away with being anti-Semitic because the term is ill-defined, or because different organizations or bodies have different interpretations of it. The then British Prime Minister Theresa May emphasized accordingly that domestic anti-Semitism is unacceptable, I quote. It is even worse that incidents are reportedly on the rise. As a government, we are making a real difference, and adopting these measures is a groundbreaking step. Theresa May said also, I quote, "It is unacceptable," no, I just said, it means there will be one definition of anti-Semitism, in essence, language or behavior that displays hatred towards Jews because they are Jews, and anyone guilty of that will be called out on it. The ARA definition is used in, for example, in Germany since 2017, when it was adopted by the German government. They had a very diplomatic expression that said they take note of the ARA definition. The German translation of this definition is not a very elaborated one, but it is even more important that they also referred, and this is something quite all of the countries have done, that it is legally not binding, but it is recommended in this form. In an accompanying letter from the Federal Ministry of the Interior to the Federal Chancellery, it is said, I quote, that this taking note underlines the commitment of the federal government in the fight against anti-Semitism on a national and international level. The federal government recommends that the working definition be taken into account, in particular in education and in adult education, as well as in training in the areas of the judiciary and the executive branch. The addendum, which states that Israel as a Jewish collective can also be the target of anti-Semitic stereotypes, makes it clear that this is contextually rather than blanket. The notion of the gray area, which I just mentioned, proposed by us at the Independent Expert Board, shows that it is always on how, who, when, why, and with what intention someone expresses such content. The examples which I just mentioned are by no means claimed to be exhaustive. Some countries adopted them only as addendum, others included them as part of the definition. In general, the examples in the sense of IRA always were meant as an integral part of the definition. Assuming that the weakness of the working definition of anti-Semitism is the gateway for its political instrumentalization, which is expressed sometimes also in media, goes nowhere, because a definition is not needed for such an argumentation, which happens in many places without the basis of a definition. To date, the working definition has been adopted or endorsed by the following governments and bodies: United Kingdom, Israel, Austria, Romania, Germany, Bulgaria, Belgium, Slovenia, Sweden, Lithuania, the Republic of North Macedonia, the Netherlands, Slovakia, Republic of Moldova, Czech Republic, Hungary, Canada, Luxembourg, Greece, France, Cyprus, Italy, Sweden, Uruguay, and Argentina. The OSCE chairmanship, the German OSCE chairmanship in 2016 tried to have this working definition also as an OSCE audio document, but it, despite intensive diplomatic attempts, they did not succeed. In his closing speech and at the OSCE Ministerial Council meeting in Hamburg in December 2016, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, the then German foreign minister, referred to the central issues. I quote, "Strengthening tolerance within and between our societies is and remains indispensable. This is a question of credibility, and we must also be concrete. For example, by finally agreeing on a common a common definition of anti-Semitism. So in this OSCE meeting, they did not succeed, especially because Russia was against it. Anti-Semitism is a changeable phenomenon that adapts to the course of time. It uses the same stereotypical patterns that have been handed down over generations, which react to current events and are directed in varying ways, primarily against Jews as an imagined collective. We encounter anti-Semitism in all social classes, in all religious spectrums and social milieux. In the extreme right-wing camp, as well as in Islamist circles. Hostility toward Jews is the most important vehicle and constitutive component of these ideologies. Even the extreme left spectrum is not free of anti-Semitical connoted constructs, which, however, are not an elementary component of left-wing extremist thought structures. However, discourses that address the Middle East conflict or anti-Zionist descriptions of imperialism or financial and interest rate policies in accordance with left-wing extremist thought patterns can convey anti-Semitic content. But anti-Semitism is not only a phenomenon that affects the political margins, it is also virulent in mainstream society. Therefore, raising society's awareness of anti-Semitism is an important moment to uncover and combat anti-Semitic tendencies. A definition that everyone can agree on, even if it has some weaknesses, is the basis for such an effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wetzel. Thank you for your speech. I'll now look in the room and see if there's any comments or question for you after this. Oh, yeah, let's go.
Yeah. Can you hear me? It's Otto.
Yeah, hi.
Good,
Otto.
good. We just at this meeting had a debate about how to fight anti-Semitism. In Germany, the government just made a task force against anti-Semitism. Could you give a little information? What is this task force going to do?
This is within the IRA presidency. German this year has the IRA presidency, and they initiated a global task force on Holocaust distortion and denial, which focuses mostly on distortion because it's very much clear what denial is. And in a lot of, for example, European countries, there is a law against Holocaust denial, but distortion is more subtle, more problematic to define. So this global task force will cover this special part, let's say, of anti-Semitism, and they provide us, or the IRA structure, let's say, with 1 million euros to provide at the end recommendations how to tackle Holocaust distortion and what Holocaust distortion is. It will be a two-part initiative. One is a brochure we will produce. Brigitte Beiler, my colleague from the Austrian delegation from the Documentation Center on the Austrian Resistance, and we put together a brochure where we try to explain the different forms of distortion. And there will be the other part, let's say, where we had about 5 or 6 workshops. In one of them, Otto Rühl was also part of, to tackle different parts of this distortion question. That means one workshop or one column is on museums and memorials, one on identifying and monitoring, one which is, I think the most important, is on teaching, teaching on this part. And there is currently in action the last workshop where we try to emphasize the problematic of social media within museums and memorials. That means, for example, we do have this in Germany in a quite often now in authentic sites where people of the Alternative für Deutschland, which is our right populist party in parliament, they try to distort the Holocaust. And so to empower those people working in authentic sites, what they can do against it. And how social media, we are not tackling so much what social media is providing. We all know that there are plenty of anti-Semitic, there's plenty of anti-Semitic content, but more how we can use social media to counteract such phenomenon as anti-Semitism, but in this case more distortion. And at the end of these workshops, there will be also a sort of a brochure, a handout with recommendations on the different issues. So I think that is the overview. And at the IRA plenary in Leipzig, I think it will be also virtually, there will be presented these recommendations, and then there will be another debate on it, and we try to implement this then next year. Also, if the German presidency ends in March 2021, but there will be then, we try to, together with the permanent big institutions as UNESCO and ODIHR and so on, we will try to formulate teaching of policymakers, journalists, and so on.
Thank you very much. We have another question in the room.
Yes, hello. I'm Daniel Rotenberg, a Danish physician. I have a question for you. You said that part of the working definition is that criticism leveled at Israel that isn't leveled at other countries could also be viewed as anti-Semitism. Now, I know that otherwise sensible countries that no one in the right mind could accuse of being anti-Semitic, like Denmark, the UK, Germany, Austria, have often voted for resolutions in the UN which level criticism at Israel that is not leveled at other countries. So that is, by definition, an anti-Semitic act committed by countries who are by no means anti-Semitic. I understand that these voting patterns are items for bargain, that this can be part of agreements where you vote for us and we vote for you, and then we'll get to fish in your waters or sell you some stuff. So I'm not saying that this act is an expression of anti-Semitic sentiments. What I'm asking you is whether your center is planning on working on this, planning on speaking with representatives of the government and asking them to reconsider, to perhaps look inwards and ask themselves, are we actually performing an anti-Semitic act by doing this?
I wouldn't say that this is an anti-Semitic act, and also not by definition. As I said, it is a criticism of Israelis' politics on Palestinian territories, but it can cross these borders. And as I said, it's always important to ask who is saying something, why, and with what aim. So if, for example, Germany in the UN is voting against or is voting for a resolution against Israel, that there are some people saying that this is anti-Semitic, but I wouldn't agree with that, because it's a legitimate criticism as it is with other countries. But I think there's an example. If you say, for example, Netanyahu is a bad boy, it's okay. You can say that against Angela Merkel, against everybody. But if you say Netanyahu is a bad boy, this is typical for Jews, then you cross this border. So this is, I think, the importance that it's not, that is not the point whether we can discuss this or not, but it depends where these lines to anti-Semitic content are crossed. I don't know whether this is what you meant, but our institute is not. What I explained was the global task force by IRA. It's not an institute. IRA is an organization by now 34 member states, where Denmark is also part of. So we are trying to be very clear that there is a legitimate criticism, but it's not, but it can cross borders. And if it uses anti-Semitic stereotypes, anti-Semitic stereotypes.
Thank you. Just look in the room and see if there's any more questions. Yes, there's one up front.
Hi, my name is Yael from Radio Shalom. Exactly concerning this problem, you know, hatred towards Jews, anti-Semitism, it's really, it's food for the media. And my problem is working with the media and always have to respond for a lot of comments coming on the media. For me, it's very difficult to differentiate between whether it's just a legal, political opinion or it's anti-Semitic. And I understood what you just said now. It's very difficult to deal with it on a daily basis because one word, if anybody writes something or said something, then one word leads to another, and the other word leads to the third, and then comes a big blow of hatred. And here I think the media play a severe role in growing this hatred, growing anti-Semitism, and nobody actually take any action to adjust it for a rational way of talking about, or differentiate between politics and hate. And how can we do this? We haven't been able to do it for ages. How can we do it? Are we modern enough to be able to do this? Or, is it something we can really educate people to think twice before they act, before they say something? Because a lot of words have a lot of power, and the media just let you to use them as anyone, as it fits for anybody. So you're hiding behind a screen. You're hiding behind something that nobody can see you. Maybe they can see your name if it's really your name, and then you can just throw a lot of bullshit. A lot of things that maybe doesn't really exist. Or so how can we deal with this? I think it's a major problem today concerning anti-Semitism. Thank you.
You're talking about media, but you mean social media especially, I think. or you mean also analog media. I would say it depends. If you talk about analog media, it is very depending on what medias, whether these medias are serious or not. But as I said, it's always difficult because there is this gray zone where something becomes anti-Semitic and where it is, let's say, within a legitimate, for example, criticism. I think it is very important that we also, as IRA, but also others who are working in this field, are trying to raise awareness on how simple it is to use anti-Semitic stereotypes, maybe also sometimes without thinking really. I wouldn't say that a boy who says to another boy, "you Jew," is an anti-Semite, but we have to cover this, and we have to explain also youngsters, or especially youngsters, because these are the people we can reach. I'm not convinced about some people are trying to debate on podiums with right extremist people. That is not. I would say this is senseless because it comes to no result. But we can try with youngsters and younger people to raise awareness on anti-Semitism, on the different forms of anti-Semitism. And this is something, at least in Germany, I don't know how this is in Denmark, but normally teachers are not so very much informed about today's or contemporary anti-Semitic stereotypes. They know about anti-Semitism in connection with the Holocaust and with National Socialism, and they will always go back on that because they feel themselves secure on this in this field. But they don't have any experiences in, for example, how to tackle Israel-connected anti-Semitism. So this is something I think we should very much promote, that teachers also get insight in these anti-Semitic forms we have to, we are faced with today. And this is for mostly Israel-connected anti-Semitism. And this is the only way, I think, to counteract this. But this is also something which tackles social media, because if this includes also a media competence in general, media competence is very important, that you are confronted with the social media with anti-Semitic content, and what you can do, where can you refer to, who will support you if you, for example, we have now in Germany an institution, Recherchestelle, it's a research institution, NGO, and there you can refer to and report about what you have seen on social media, also other anti-Semitic attacks. So, and I know that social media is a problem because it's an international, unlimited medium. So, but there are initiatives to also to try to get Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, let's say, on a level where they also eliminate such content. Otherwise, there's the other pillar, I think, to provide counteracting content on the web, so that in a peer leader level, that means young people use the web, as we now also try in this global task force to do something in that sense, that they use social media channels to raise awareness on these issues. I think it's a puzzle. We have to do it on different levels, and the politics must be very clear that we don't want to have anti-Semitism in our countries, and there this definition helps, and then support educational and other on educational and other levels to raise this awareness.
Dr. Wetzel, thank you very much for taking your time today for this conference and also for answering the questions. Again, thank you for being with us.
You're welcome. And thank you.